Hello to you. I am FOX26 meteorologist Remeisha Shade. We definitely have a lot to talk about. We are still tracking the tropics, even though we're a few days away from the final month of our 2024 Atlantic Basin hurricane season. So let me let you know what is going on out there, what we could potentially be dealing with over the next week, because the tropics remain active. There's the potential that we could have another tropical depression that could turn into a tropical storm or hurricane over the next week or so. So let's get right to it. Here's where we've been so far for this season. Of course, we've had 15 named storms ranging from Alberto early on in the season all the way to Oscar, which was the last name that we used from this list. So that makes 15 named storms. Out of those, 10 blossomed to become hurricanes, and out of those hurricanes, 4 became major hurricanes. That means category 3 or greater. Of course, we had Beryl, which was briefly a category 5 that hit Houston as a category 1, now all the way back on July 8th. But some of you out there may still be recovering from some of the aftermath, some of that flood water damage, and from some of the wind damage. We had wind gusts with Beryl even at a category 1 near 100 miles per hour. So that was a feisty one that rolled right through Houston. Of course, we did have some additional hurricanes after that, but they did not reach major hurricane status. The next major hurricane was Hurricane Helene, of course, which devastated Florida, parts of Tennessee, the Carolinas. Then we had Kirk, which was a major category 4 hurricane at one point. Last major hurricane that we've dealt with so far for the Atlantic Basin was Milton, which also grew to a category 5, just like Beryl. So 4 major hurricanes so far. We are now waiting to see if we're going to have any additional named storms. The next name on that list would be Patty, Raphael, Sarah. Then we'd move down to Tony, Valerie, and then William, and that would be the end of the list. So hopefully we don't make it all the way to the end of the list, but it is still possible. We've still got a little over a month to get through before we can say goodbye, adios to this hurricane season. Here's a wider view of what's happening across the Atlantic Basin. We don't see much happening out across the Atlantic Ocean. Gulf of Mexico is fairly quiet. So for now, we're really just monitoring what's going on in the Caribbean. And you can kind of see a little flare up of some action or activity in the southwestern Caribbean Sea. That is a disturbance that we are closely monitoring. In fact, the National Hurricane Center is saying that this is an area to watch. This area where you see the X it's very close to that east coast of Central America, and the area highlighted in orange would be the area of its general track or movement. So if it develops, it would likely start to move off to the east-northeast, closer to the central Caribbean. But right now it's kind of hugging that eastern Central American coast. Over the next 48 hours, chance that we will have a tropical system right at 0%. So an extremely low chance. Not expecting much to happen with any additional organization over the next few days. However, it's really the next week that we have to closely monitor this thing, because that chance for development over the next 7 days is all the way up to 40%. And of course, if it is in the Caribbean, it could have some big impacts, especially the models showing it moving towards maybe Jamaica, Haiti, Dominican Republic, and maybe even spreading a lot of that tropical moisture up into parts of Florida. So we will have to watch this potential tropical system closely. What does our Futurecast model say? Well, let's put it into motion. Not really showing much organization happening through 11 p.m. tonight, just some disorganized showers and storms kind of bubbling up across the southwestern Caribbean Sea. As we go into the middle of the week, Tuesday into Wednesday, still not showing a whole lot of organization, but you can see a lot of tropical moisture impacting Central America, Mexico, parts of the Caribbean islands, and that moisture will start to kind of develop and get more organized, I think, just after Halloween. So by Wednesday and Thursday, still not showing a ton, but let's go into this weekend, because that's when things really start to get more interesting, especially by Sunday afternoon. We'll stop the clock here around 3:30 p.m. this Sunday. Notice we're starting to see more of a general circulation here. This is going to be south of Haiti and the Dominican Republic and not far from Jamaica, but it is starting to get a little better organized. So this is when we could potentially have a tropical depression or tropical storm forming in the Central Caribbean. The next name on the list would be Patty. So we could have that as we go into this weekend or early next week. So let's talk about where we are right now and what we have. We do have an area of low pressure that will likely develop in the southwestern Caribbean. It could become a tropical storm or Hurricane Patty by this weekend. It's not expected to head towards Texas, but it could bring quite a bit of heavy rain and maybe some gusty wind over towards Haiti, Dominican Republic, Jamaica, Cuba, and possibly into parts of Florida. So it's still a system that we have to watch closely. Sea surface temps or water temps out there for this time of hurricane season are still unusually warm, still well into the 80s for the western, northwestern parts of the Caribbean. Temperatures also still very warm across the Gulf of Mexico and the western Atlantic, still in the 80s for many spots. So we've definitely got the fuel for a potential tropical system to kind of feed on and get stronger if it happens. But like I said, the chance of it coming to Houston, slim to none, but Florida could definitely get some rain and maybe a flood threat from a possible tropical system, so we will monitor it closely. We've already had 15 named storms this season, 10 hurricanes, 4 major hurricanes, so above normal as compared to our average for the entire season already. Our average number of named storms around 14, 7 hurricanes usually, and typically about 3 major hurricanes. So if we do have Patty develop, that would be 16 named storms. And if it becomes a hurricane, that would be our 11th hurricane of the season. So it's already been an above average season, and we will continue to expect more potential activity developing in the Atlantic basin. So here are the typical formation zones, areas where we could possibly have development for the last few days of October. And that would be central western parts of the Atlantic and also western northwestern parts of the Caribbean and that eastern southeastern section of the Gulf of Mexico. Chances though, as we jump into November, really start to dwindle or go down with the chance of these tropical systems in the Gulf of Mexico. And for a big chunk of the Atlantic, with the exception of parts of the western and central Atlantic, chances are much lower. However, notice in the Caribbean, western central portions of the Caribbean, the exact area that we'll be monitoring, still with that shot, that possibility for a tropical system to get going. And that is the area of concern, the area that we will closely be monitoring over the next several days. Like I said, don't think anything is going to happen over the next 1 to 2 days, but as we go into the next week, that is when we could still have another tropical system. Probably not what you want to hear since we're a few days away from November, but yes, it could still happen. Typically this time of the year, that chance for those named storms that could turn into tropical systems, tropical storms or hurricanes, very low, but it is not impossible. So even though it's a low shot, even though we only have about a month and a few days left in this hurricane season, we will still continue to watch things closely and give you updates every afternoon to let you know what's happening and what's changing out there. But here's the good news for us. If you're in Houston or in Southeast Texas, usually by this point of the hurricane season, the chance of a tropical system developing, pushing into the Gulf of Mexico and heading our way, extremely low. Hasn't really happened this late in the season. So I think we're okay here, but of course we'll continue to monitor the Caribbean, Mexico, Central America, those other Caribbean islands, Haiti, Dominican Republic, Jamaica, because there could still be some issues with some heavy rain, flood potential, mudslides, gusty winds as we go through the next week. So that will do it for today's tropical update. No named storms out there just yet, but we are still monitoring for that potential for Patty to develop over the next week. Stay safe out there. I'm Fox 26 meteorologist Remeisha. Enjoy the rest of your Monday.